Hello, today we're going to talk about completing the square with quadratics. Alright, completing the square is just another way to factor stuff down. So I've shown you other methods in other videos. This is just another method to do it. Basically, it's just simplifying it down. But there's a lot of steps. I'm going to color code it for you to kind of keep track of it. If you like doing it, it's a good way to do it. I personally don't, but I got to show you how to do it anyways. So the first thing we want to do is you need to isolate your x squared and your x. To do that, you have to move your constant or your y-intercept to the other side. And there you go. So what you do on one side, you do the other side. So isolate the constant is what you're doing first. Your second step is b over 2 squared. So you're halving your b and then squaring it. So RB is equal to -2. So -2 over 2 squared gives me -1 squared, which is 1. All right, our next step is we are going to add that 1 to both sides of our equation. So it gives us x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 4. Next step. So isolate the constant, do the b, halve the b and square it, add it to both sides. Now our fourth step is to simplify this down. So we're just going to basically factor that down. So x and x, because x times x gives x squared. Our multiples of 1 are 1 and 1. Since that's negative and that's positive, what times what gives us a positive, but when we add them gives us a negative? 2 negatives, 1 and 1. And we're going to write that like that. There we go. And it's still equal to 4. Now, it will always come out like this where you'll have the two same binomials. Will it always be x minus 1 and x minus 1? Absolutely not. But it will always come out where these two binomials are exactly the same. If it's not, then you did something wrong. All right, our fifth step I'll do right here. This is where you square root both sides. So the square root of that, the square root of that. Since this is already squared, so what's the opposite of squaring something? Square rooting it. So this and this cancel out, and I just have x minus 1. The square root of 4 is 2, but it's plus and minus 2. Because when you square root something, you get the plus and minus with it. So now you solve. So x minus 1 equals 2, then x minus 1 equals -2. Don't forget the plus and minus, you solve. So x equals 3. And x equals -1. So your answer is 3, -1. And there you go. That's your first example. 5-step process of completing the square. All right, I'm gonna start going a little bit quicker through this because I've shown it to you once and you can slow it down, but I don't want this video to be 30 minutes long. So here's another one. Sometimes it's already isolated for you, so you can just skip down to this step. Our b is 14, so 14 over 2 squared gives us 7 squared, which is 49. Add that to both sides of the equation, so x squared plus 14x plus 49 equals 51 plus 49. Excuse me, x plus 14, x squared plus 14x plus 49 equals 100. Fourth step is we simplify it down. I'm not going to go through the whole factoring process because I know it's going to be x plus 7 squared equals 100. Because basically, whatever number you get right here, that's 7, is always going to be the number right there. You just have to figure out the sign in the middle. So right before you square it, that will always be there. And you can look at it as we go through it, it will always be there. And our last step is we square root both of them. All right, So that's the whole thing. Square, this goes away. So x plus 7. Square root of 100 is 10, plus and minus. So x plus 7 equals 10, and x plus 7 equals negative 10. Minus 7, so x equals 3, and x equals negative 17. When you've done it a lot, it becomes easy and you can see the process. It is actually a good method, but I'm going to show you where it can get difficult with this next one. All right, now let's see what happens when we don't have a perfect square root down here when we square root it. So when we square rooted before, we had 100 and we had 49. Those are both perfect square roots. Let's find out what happens when it's not. So the first thing we do is isolate the constant to the other side. Seven. Next thing we do is our b is equal to negative 4. So we're going to put that in. Negative 2 squared, which is 4. Now we plug that into both sides. So x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 7 plus 4. So x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 11. So now we factor this down. We get x minus 2 squared equals 11. Because what I tell you, that will always go there. Now I assume there's exceptions to that rule, because there's exceptions to rules in math all the time. So that's mostly usually the case, is that will match up with that. So now we have to square root it and make sure I've done everything right so far and haven't messed anything up, and we're good. So then we have to square root. Let me write this a little bit higher up now. So x minus 2 squared equals 11. Square root it, square root the 11. All right, this goes, so I have x minus 2 equals, now I can't square root 11, and I can't break it down. So if you can break it down or simplify it, you want to simplify it. With a factor tree of 11 is 1 and 11. So it doesn't factor down any or simplifying the radical. So I have plus and minus the square root of 11. Now, some of you guys might be freaking out right now. It's really not that difficult. You do it the same exact way that you did before. I'm going to add 2 here, add 2 here. So I get x equals 2 plus the square root of 11. Over here, I'm going to add 2, and I get x equals 2 minus the square root of 11. And those are your 2 answers. So how you write this is just simply bracket 2 plus the square root of 11, comma, 2 minus the square root of 11. And that is your answer for that. So it won't always come out as a perfect square root. All you have to do is do the plus and minus. You do the same exact thing. Same process. Don't forget it. All right, so now we've dealt with ones that came out pretty much clean. The last one we had were you couldn't break down square root. Now what if there's something else in the A position besides the 1? So in this case we have a 2. So you actually have to add another step here first. Well, you can add it in wherever. I'm going to add it in first. So here, if you have something in the A, you have to get rid of it. You have to divide it through the whole thing. So that gives me a new problem of x squared plus 4x minus 6. Now I isolate it over. And there you go. And now we go about our way. But you have to get rid of that first before you can start square rooting it or factoring it down. So our next step there we go. So we add it to both sides. we're good. See, the 2 and the 2 match up again. Let's just keep on rolling. And our last part is we square root both sides. So it gives us x plus 2 equals, this has no factor tree, so it's 2 and 5, both prime numbers, so you can't break it down at all. So you leave it as plus and minus square root of 10. So x plus 2 equals square root of 10. X plus 2 equals negative square root of 10. Minus 2, x equals negative 2 plus the square root of 10. Minus 2, x equals negative 2 minus the square root of 10. And those are your answers right there. Alright, this has been a bunch of examples about completing the square. I hope it helps and good luck.